Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a really interesting paper called LoongRL.
That's right. It tackles a big challenge. How to get large language models, LLMs, to perform advanced reasoning, not just find information, when they're dealing with incredibly long texts.
Yeah, we're talking about context up to 128,000 tokens, huge amounts of information.
And the core mission here was figuring out how to use reinforcement learning, RL, to teach these models better thinking patterns specifically for these long contexts.
So for anyone listening who works with these models, you'll know the issue immediately. They can handle these huge context windows now, technically.
They can hold the data.
But holding it versus actually, analyzing it, integrating information across thousands of words for complex stuff like debugging code or reading dense legal docs, that's still a major hurdle.
Right. The models are often pretty good at retrieval, finding a specific fact if it's stated clearly.
But the deeper reasoning, connecting piece A to piece B when they're buried pages apart, that's where they tend to struggle.
So LoongRL's goal was exactly that. Push the models beyond simple lookup, get them to develop structured ways of thinking needed for these long-form analysis tasks using RL.
Okay, but to train using RL effectively, you need the right kind of training data, right? Especially for this kind of problem.
You do. You need tasks that are genuinely difficult, verifiable, and can't just be solved by looking something up. And that kind of long context reasoning data is scarce.
So they had to create it.
Pretty much. They introduced a method called the KeyChain synthesis approach. It's designed specifically to generate these hard, long context problems where simple retrieval just won't cut it.
KeyChain synthesis. Okay, how does that work? Sounds intriguing.
Well, it's clever. They take standard, shorter, multi-hop question-answering data sets, things like Hotpot QA or music.
Okay, data sets where you need to link a couple of facts together.
Exactly. But then they transform them. First, they blow up the context size to around 16,000 tokens by adding loads and loads of distractor documents. Just noise, essentially.
Right, burying the needle, so to speak. But that's just step one.
Yeah, the crucial part is the key chain itself. They insert these chains of key value pairs into the text. These pairs are linked using unique identifiers, like UUID strings.
UUIDs, like those long, random-looking codes.
Very specific strings. And here's the twist. The original question from the dataset, it gets hidden. It's placed at the very end of one of these UUID chains.
Ah, okay. So the task the model gets isn't the original question directly.
No. The task becomes, start at this specific UUID, follow the chain link by link through all that noisy 16K token text, find the hidden original question, and then answer it using the surrounding context.
I see. That forces a specific procedure. You have to follow the chain correctly just to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. You can't just scan for keywords related to an answer.
Precisely. It decouples the procedural step of finding the question from the reasoning step of answering it. If the model tries a shortcut, it fails because it won't even know the real query.
That seems like a really smart way to enforce structured processing.
Okay, so they have this difficult task generator. How did they handle the reward signal for the RL? That can be tricky.
Very tricky, especially with text generation. They needed something reliable that wouldn't be easy to game, so they used a rule-based verifier.
Rule-based?
Yeah, based on a two-way substring exact match. They also required the model to put its final answer inside a special box tag, like boxed answer.
Okay, what does two-way substring exact match mean in practice?
It means the check passes if the model's boxed answer contains the ground truth answer, or if the ground truth answer contains the model's boxed answer.
So it allows for slight variations in phrasing as long as the core information is there.
Exactly. It tolerates minor differences, but still checks for the essential content, making it robust against reward hacking, while giving a clear success signal for the RL training.
Right. And putting the model through this complex structured task had a really interesting effect, didn't it? This leads to the paper's big discovery. It really did. The most fascinating outcome was that training on this difficult keychain data caused an emergent thinking pattern in the models. It wasn't explicitly coded, it just arose.
Emergent, like it learned a strategy on its own. What did this pattern look like?
It was structured, almost human-like, actually.
A sequence. Plan, retrieve, reason, recheck.
Plan, retrieve, reason, recheck. Okay, break that down.
So first, the model learned to generate an explicit plan, like outlining the steps needed to solve the problem.
Okay.
Then, for each step in its plan, it would retrieve the relevant information from the context.
Makes sense.
Then comes a crucial bit. If it was uncertain about the retrieved info, it would actively recheck it, like double-checking its sources.
Self-correction almost.
Kinda, yeah. Before finally performing the reasoning needed for that step and moving to the next part of its plan.
That sounds, well, a lot more methodical than how we usually think of LLMs operating,
Right.
especially the planning and rechecking.
It is, and it's a stark contrast to models trained without this kind of difficult, structured data. How do those typically behave?
In conventionally trained models, the reasoning and retrieval steps are often tangled together. They usually don't make an explicit plan, and they might retrieve something but then not really deeply analyze or verify it before jumping to a conclusion, which, unsurprisingly, leads to more errors in complex tasks.
So this keychain training didn't just make it better at the task, it fundamentally changed how the model approached the problem.
That seems to be the case.
Yeah.
It induced a more robust, structured internal process.
And the really amazing part you mentioned earlier was how well this pattern generalized, right?
Oh, absolutely. This plan-retrieve-reason-recheck strategy was learned while training on 16K token sequences.
Which is long, but not the full 128K they were aiming for.
Right. But the pattern transferred remarkably well. It generalized effectively to contexts all the way up to 128,000 tokens.
So the thinking skill scaled, even though the direct training context didn't.
Exactly. The model learned a fundamental approach to breaking down and solving complex long-context problems. And that approach worked even when the problem was 8 times larger than the ones it trained on.
That has huge implications for training efficiency. Which brings us nicely to the methodology section. They deliberately trained at 16K.
Yes, that was a conscious choice. Training LLMs with reinforcement learning, especially with rollouts over 128K tokens, the computational costs, the memory requirements, it's just prohibitive right now.
So they leveraged this generalization capability, train the skill on something manageable, let the skill scale up.
That was the strategy. Avoid the massive cost of 128K RL training by making 16K training effective enough to instill that transferable pattern.
Smart. Was the training data purely these keychain problems, or did they mix it up?
They used a mix. It wasn't just the super hard keychain stuff. They included that, about 7,500 examples.
Yeah.
But they also included medium difficulty multi-hop QA data, probably to keep performance strong on more standard reasoning tasks.
Right. Don't want to overspecialize.
And they added specific long context retrieval tests, like needle-in-a-haystack tasks, about 1,000 synthetic examples to make sure the basic lookup ability was still sharp.
Needle in a haystack. That's finding one specific sentence in a massive document.
Yeah, a stress test for pure retrieval over long distances.
And anything else in the mix?
Yes, one more important component. About 5,000 short context math problems
Yeah, why not?
to preserve general reasoning abilities. They didn't want the focus on long context analysis to cause the model to forget how to do basic, logical and numerical reasoning.
That makes a lot of sense. Maintain the foundations. Did they structure the training process itself? Like start easy and get harder?
They did, especially for the 7 billion parameter model. They used a 3-stage curriculum.
Okay, what were the stages?
Stage 1 was a warm-up, likely on the easier non-keychain data. Just get the basics tuned.
Standard practice.
Then Stage 2 introduced the difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
The KeyChain data was brought in to start teaching that structured thinking pattern.
And stage 3.
Stage 3 was focused training, using something they called hard mining.
Hard mining. Sounds like focusing on the tough stuff.
Exactly. They looked at the training examples and identified the ones the model was consistently getting wrong during the RL rollouts.
Ah, so find its weaknesses.
Right. And they then focused the training updates primarily on that subset of difficult problems, the ones that hadn't mastered yet. They essentially discarded the easy wins to concentrate compute on the areas needing the most improvement.
Very efficient, maximizing the learning from each training step. Okay, so sophisticated data synthesis, careful data mixing, staged curriculum.
No.
Did it work? Let's talk results.
It worked quite impressively, actually. On the long context multi-hop QA benchmarks, the really challenging reasoning tasks, the accuracy jumped significantly.
How significant?
We're talking absolute gains of over 23% for the 7B model version, Qwen 2.57B Instruct, and over 21% for the 14B version.
Wow, 20 plus points absolute gain. That's huge on these kinds of tests.
It really is. It suggests a major improvement in the underlying reasoning capability.
And how did these LoongRL models stack up against, say, bigger, well-known models?
The LoongRL 14B model performed remarkably well. It achieved a score of 74.2 on these benchmarks.
And how does that compare?
Well, it put it right up there, almost neck and neck with much larger frontier models like A3 Mini, which scored 74.5, and DeepSeek R1 at 74.9.
So a 14 billion parameter model trained with this method is competing with models potentially much larger.
Yes, it shows that targeted training methods focused on inducing the right kind of reasoning patterns can really punch above their weight class in terms of parameter count.
And did that generalization we talked about hold up on other benchmarks outside the training setup?
It did. They tested it on narrative QA, which uses contexts typically in the 32K to 64K token range, longer than the 16K training context. The LoongRL models showed big improvements there too. Absolute gains of about 15% for the 7B and 16% for the 14B model.
So the plan-retrieve-reason-recheck pattern learned at 16K was definitely functional and beneficial at 32K, 64K.
And presumably beyond, up to the 128K tested elsewhere. It confirms the transferability of the learned skill.
What about basic retrieval? Did focusing on reasoning hurt its ability to just find things?
Interestingly, it seems to have improved it. On those needle-in-a-haystack tests,
Yeah.
the LoongRL 7B model achieved a perfect 100% accuracy across all context lengths and depths tested.
Perfect score. That's tough on those tests. How did the original model do?
The base Quen 2.57B model, before LoongRL training, couldn't achieve that perfect score. It failed on some parts of the test.
So better reasoning ability somehow led to more reliable retrieval too. Maybe the planning helps it locate things better.
That could be it. A more structured approach might just make the whole process more robust, including the retrieval part. And importantly, they checked general knowledge and skills too.
Like the math problems they included in training, did those abilities hold up?
Yes, they effectively preserved the short context and general reasoning capabilities. They even saw small gains on benchmarks like MMLU, about 2.8% for the 7B model.
So, no catastrophic forgetting. It learned the new long context skill without sacrificing its existing broad ability.
That's the takeaway. It's a targeted enhancement.
It really seems like the design of that keychain data was the linchpin here. Forcing that specific kind of procedural hurdle seems to have unlocked a different mode of operation in the LLM.
I think that's fair to say. The success hinges on using that carefully constructed difficulty to induce this transferable planned retrieve reason recheck pattern. That pattern is the core mechanism driving the performance gains.
And thinking about it from an efficiency standpoint,
Yeah.
developing this advanced reasoning capability, which works all the way up to 128K tokens, primarily through training at a much cheaper 16K context length, that's a significant demonstration.
It really is. It underscores how engineering the difficulty and structure of the training data can be a powerful lever, potentially more efficient than just scaling up model size or raw compute hours indefinitely. How you teach seems just as important as how big the student is.